It's now 6 o'clock, August 21st, 2018. Now for our regular scheduled board meeting. Tonight I've asked Commissioner Hopland to open us with invocation and pledge.
Let's pray. This afternoon, our Father, we come once again in your name. Thank you for your blessings. Father, we thank you for things as well as they are. Father, we thank you for how you brought us and kept us. We pray, God, that you bless over, watch over, protect us. Be with us this day. Hold us in the hollow of your hand. Father, help us with decisions, help us to do the right thing. Bless us now as a county. Look over our country, look over our leaders, all over this nation. For we need you and we can't get along without you. We pray that you make a way for us. Keep us safe. Be with the sick, the afflicted everywhere, the bereaved family. God, just have mercy. Father, we ask these blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from August 7th, 2018 regular scheduled board meeting. Have any corrections or anything needs to be added or taken away?
Chairman, I motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Fleming.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Sessions. Any changes? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to consent agenda. We're going to pull 3 and 9. Is there any others which will be pulled for discussion? Hearing none, I have a motion to approve 2, 4 through 8, and 10 through 16. Move to approve. Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Richardson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tell. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item number 3, approval of preliminary engineering agreement between CXX Transportation Inc. and Suwannee County for new crossing at 175th Road. I think there was just one thing Mr. Harris wanted to touch on.
Just clarification, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. In your packet, $35,000 is what they're telling us that's going to cost us on 5 or 6 of the pages. When you get to the last page, it showed 30. I think that's a typo, and I'll try to clarify that with them, but I would ask that you authorize $35,000 in that agreement. And the public's benefit, I'll just explain, this is the engineering expense that we're paying CSX because they will handle their own engineering within the CSX right away for that new crossing.
Any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Hill, that's second. Second by Commissioner Richardson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moving on to item number 9, approval of task order with North Florida Professional Services for engineering and design of I-75-136 sewer plant. Budget impact funded from the grant proceeds. I think there was one question from Mr. Hancock. If you want to make your way to the podium, or maybe 2 questions. Or a few questions.
It's fine. Bo Hancock, 6135 Wiggins Road. I've got a couple of quick questions. The OSTDSs, which I believe are the septic tanks that are existing out there. I was just concerned. I didn't know if it was part of the grant till I talked to Ricky about it. But I think that those septic tanks are going to be taken out, but the removal will be paid for by the grant funds. Then they connect. Correct? Okay. That was one question. On the second page, subtask 1.2, now these are assumptions that they're having to make because they don't know until they get out there. It says the current understanding is that the planned facility will not have to handle any type of industrial wastewater, but only wastewater from commercial facilities. which in the commercial category, you can still have some, what I would term industrial uses within allowable use within our commercial category. Will that perhaps create a problem? Or do we need to look perhaps at our commercial classification, zoning, and land use to see if we need to make some modifications? Or do we need to have them include something? I don't know.
I'll share the microphone with you.
What that means is we don't have any existing industrial uses out there today. I mean, literally, there aren't any industrial uses that require any type of industrial pretreatment before going into that system. If something comes online later on, we'll just deal with it at that time. Even if we have to deal with pre-treat on site somewhere before it goes into that system. So we'll do our-
All my concern there was, are we planning enough ahead or something? And I saw that one. Subtask 1.5 says, once they determine where on that 16 acres they're gonna put everything, they're gonna do 5 borings, soil borings, going down 20 feet. They will include in these 5 soil borings in the areas that the wastewater facility, building, wastewater disposal facility, stormwater pond, and the lift station. But they only mentioned building, not plural, just building. It's all of the engineering, and building, and all of that going to be under one roof.
There will be a single building that will handle some equipment, and maybe, some other items. And then there will be the plant itself and ponds. As you go through that task, though, it also calls for GPR, the ground penetrating radar. Once we go in there, the idea right now is that we're going to preserve as much buffering as we can. We'll only clear what we need to. Once we've cleared, then we'll drag the sled and do the ground penetrating radar and look for anomalies and do borings where we need to firm up the data if there are any anomalies from the ground penetrating radar.
If we're on the committee, they're on the committee here, task order just 5.
Right.
Because I was just wondering if there was more than one building for us to talk about.
If it requires any more than that, we can handle that with a change order. There should be sufficient funding there for that and grant proceeds.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right. Any questions from board members?
Sir, I'm ready to get going.
Put the mic down.
I'm ready to get it going.
Motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Sessions. Got it. Second by Commissioner Fleming. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to item 17, presentation regarding state of resource payment in lieu of taxes. Hugh Thomas, Water Manager.
Good evening, Commissioners. Everyone's doing well this evening. Well, it's my pleasure to stand before you tonight, to present you with a check for payment in lieu of taxes here in Suwannee County. And I appreciate the opportunity to stand before you representing the Suwannee River Water Management. Before I begin, I do have a brief presentation that I would like to give, kind of an overview of the district and what the district has been doing, and our focus going forward with that. As I'm sure many of you are aware, the district consists of all or part of 15 counties here in North Florida, and makes up about almost 7,700 square miles. And we have 13 river basins here, and we are blessed with a variety of different size, different magnitude springs. We have over 300 springs here in North Florida. Excuse me. And we have the largest number of first magnitude springs as well here in Florida. So certainly springs protection, springs awareness is the main focus for us in this district. Some of the initiatives that we've had recently, our major initiatives consist of our water supply assessment, which spans the years of 2015 to 2035. This is a planning document. Our governing board recently accepted the recommendations as presented in this water supply assessment. I'll be presenting a little more information about that in just a few moments with there. But also want to make you aware of our river grants. That's our regional initiative valuing environmental resources. Those are our grants that the district funds ourselves, and those help many communities as well as some of our counties, both with flood protection, water supply, and wastewater improvements locally. And then our springs grant as well, we're very blessed from the governor and the legislature through the Department of Environmental Protection for our springs grant. And since 2013, we've had some 26 projects funded here in the Suwannee district to the tune of almost $25 million. So we are very fortunate. Springs protection is certainly foremost in the legislature's mind as well going forward. We have a new groundwater model. This is the North Florida, Southeast Georgia groundwater model, or NEFSIG for short. This model has been under development for some time in conjunction with St. John's River Water Management District. This model actually will model water withdrawals and water input for the Florida aquifer. The area of interest for this model extends not only across North Florida, but also into Southeast Georgia and up into South Carolina as well. And we'll be looking at that model. We hope to have it online later this year. We've had it through peer review comments, and we're addressing some of those comments now. But we do anticipate that model coming online. It'll actually be used for consumptive use permitting, as well as our projects. Where do we site our projects to get the most bang for the buck for the taxpayer dollars that are going into these projects from a water resource perspective? Also, we are continuing to work with our minimum flows and minimum levels programs, and we're working with the Department of Environmental Protection to develop those as well. Some of the projects within Suwannee County that we have been working with actually expand our grant programs, both springs and our river grant programs. We've had 9 projects here in the county itself that have been funded through our river grants. And we do have some additional ones in-house right now that we're just starting. We just had a new cycle that our governing board approved, and we'll be moving ahead with those projects as well. And we've also had 6 springs programs that we have funded, both for springs restoration, for infrastructure improvements, both water supply and wastewater improvements here in the county. And we continue to look forward to the legislature. We hope to have our new springs project for the 2018-2019 year released soon, and we'll be moving ahead with them as soon as we get the go-ahead. Some of the focus areas for the district that I wanted to make you aware of going forward, certainly our high water concerns. We've been amply blessed with rainfall this year. We've had 2 wet years this year, and we have a number of our counties that are experiencing some flooding in low-lying areas primarily. These are not caused from high levels in the river. It's from rainfall that we have received. Some counties have received more than double their annual average rainfall within a short period of time over this summer. And that's a lot to deal with. Our groundwater levels are full. The next slide that I'll put up actually has a graphic showing this. And but our groundwaters are full, and we want to make sure that you all are aware of that. And the Water Management District is here to help in any way possible to address flooding concerns. Our outreach and education, we are working with our legislators, our communities as well, county government, and even within our school systems to help educate what the Water Management District is doing to protect our water resources here in North Florida. And we want to do that through building legacy partnerships with the projects that I've already outlined. And certainly everything that the Water Management District does, we want it to be science-based so that we have a true standard to go by. This is the graphic representing our high water levels. This was current. This was actually current as of July 2018. This was just presented to our governing board last week. You can see the dark blue areas there represent what's from a status perspective is what we consider high groundwater conditions across and primarily with this, the southern and eastern portions of the district. The light blue areas the dark blue represents a very high condition. The next shade of blue there, a little bit lighter, represents the high groundwater condition that we're experiencing right now. And then the light blue represents the normal, those normal areas. And as you can see, we've got one area that still is showing our groundwater as a low area, but it is very limited in size across the district. So we just want to make sure everyone is aware of these conditions. One of the efforts that we have going forward is to work with our county and city governments to look at our LIDAR information and correlate that to rainfall and groundwater conditions from an outreach perspective to make people aware of that, whenever we do get into conditions like we got this year, they can anticipate potential flooding events that may occur in some areas. Going back to the water supply assessment, again, this is a planning document, so it does look at projected growth. Over the next 20 years, out to 2035, we're anticipating the largest growth in this district from agriculture, from a water use perspective. The numbers that you see on here represent groundwater withdrawals. In 2010, we had groundwater withdrawals averaging about 229 million gallons per day across the entire district. For the anticipated growth, we are looking at, in 2035, groundwater withdrawals of upwards of 300 million gallons per day, a growth of about 71 million gallons per day. And it is the work of the district to provide that water supply. It doesn't always have to be groundwater. Some of the recommendations that you'll see in just a moment from our water supply assessment has provided information that our groundwater resources can't sustain this type of growth. So we're looking at other options, enhanced aquifer recharge projects, as well as potential surface water use with that. We want growth to occur here in North Florida, but we have to plan for it as well from a water use perspective as well as others. The recommendations in the water supply assessment are that we develop an eastern planning region, which is highlighted there in the blue and the green. The blue area actually represents existing water resource caution areas that were identified in the 2010 water supply assessment and water supply plan. With that, primarily those are in the upper and lower Santa Fe basins, the Alapaha Basin, and the upper Suwannee. The recommendations from the current water supply assessment are that those water resource caution areas be expanded to the eastern portion of the Suwannee River. We have 6 springs and 2 segments of river that indicate that for the projected growth that we're anticipating, our groundwater, there'll be groundwater or impacts to our water resources. As you know, during base flow conditions, our rivers are made up of ultimately groundwater that derives from our springs. And so we have to evaluate that. So the recommendation was to extend those caution areas to include those areas that are highlighted as green on here, and that will become our eastern planning region. Across the river, on the western side, highlighted in pink on the graphic that you see there, will be our western planning region. Efforts going forth will be to evaluate projected growth in this area and to determine how we can best achieve that growth and the needed water for that growth within that area. The area that's highlighted there, or crosshatched rather, adjacent to the river corridor and then down into Levy County, those areas have been identified that there are potential. Much as I mentioned for the 6 springs and 2 river segments, looking out to 2035, if everything comes from groundwater, there's an additional segment of river that has been identified, and this is based upon modeling, and also an additional 2 springs that would be impacted if we solely rely upon groundwater for that expanded growth. So that's why the water supply assessment was accepted, and as I've indicated, it is a planning document, trying to determine how we can move ahead. And with that, that concludes my presentation for this information, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. If not, I've got a check for you all that I'm sure you'll be glad to see, and it'd be my pleasure to present it tonight.
Any questions?
I do, just one quick one. Your projects, your spring projects this year,
Yes, sir.
did Branford make the cut this one on funding?
I will have to look at it. This is a different process that we have this year. DEP has made the recommendations. That release just came out last week, but they still have to be approved by the legislative budget committee. We hope to know something by November, December timeframe on that information. We will be following up with the participating recipients.
Any other questions? I don't want to hear it. Yes, sir. Just pay that check.
I do have a check here. The total bill payment for this year is $30,294.19. The check tonight is actually in the amount of $691.81. The remaining $12,602.38 has been in a check to the school board here in Suwannee County. Glad to present it. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. By the way, this is Katie Kelly, if you've not met her yet. She is our new legislative affairs chief. I know many of you have worked with Steve Minnis over the years. Steve's a little road weary and thinks we're gonna let him retire one day. He's not there yet, but we have hired Katie. She comes to us with extensive experience in legislative affairs, so please call on her or myself at any time we be of help.
Thank you. And welcome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna have to skip down to one time specific. Mr. Meeks, I'm sorry. If he has a bad football season this year, it's my fault. I told him I'd move him to the top of the list. They're having football picks tonight, and I looked right past it. The 6:05 p.m. or as soon as the matter can be heard, discuss with possible board action, preliminary plat for County Springs Estate subdivisions. Ron Meeks, planning and zoning.
Mr. Chairman and board members, we have a preliminary plat approval for Country Springs Estates. It's located in section 34, township 3 south, range 11 east. It's at the southeast intersection of 225th Road and 148th Street. The property is located in an agricultural 1 zoning district. Total size of the subdivision is 20.26 acres. Contains a total of 4 lots. Those properties are 5.01 acres plus in size. There's 1 lot to the north, it's a little larger. This is the first step in the process of approving the plat. This is the preliminary approval. We would anticipate having the final plat approval with title opinion and everything to support that approximately 30 days after the board would grant preliminary approval. Do you have any questions of me or the surveyor that's present?
Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions, Mr. Senator?
No.
Is there anything that you need from the board other than some questions with me? There's nothing that needs to be approved tonight, is there?
You just approved the preliminary plat.
Do I have a motion to approve the preliminary plat? Motion approved. Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Fleming to approve, got a second by Commissioner Sessions. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Thank you, sir. Hope I didn't miss you. Season up too bad. All right, go back up to item 18. Mr. Ford has a presentation for us.
Yes, sir. Copy of the PowerPoint.
Good afternoon, or evening rather, Board. My name is Robert Ford. I'm not sure if I need to identify myself tonight, but just to be on the safe side, to keep Mr. Brevet from getting me, I'm going to go ahead and identify myself. I'm Robert Ford. I live at 8896 135th Loop, Live Oak, Florida. And to Mr. Chairman, Board, and public, I just want to thank you for this opportunity this evening to make this presentation. My family, the Ford family, is honored and grateful for this opportunity to donate this military awards display that is displayed over to the corner over here to the Suwannee County Museum. This, hopefully this display will symbolically highlight the extraordinary service of one of our county native sons. I'm grateful for this opportunity to present this and some highlights about an unsung hero in Suwannee County. But first, I must breach a private conversation that I had with a county commissioner. This is something I hold dear, and I do not typically do. But the idea to donate this display to the museum did not come from myself or the Ford family. The suggestion to donate display came from the county commissioner in District 1, Commissioner Don Hale. What's so extraordinary about his suggestion is this. He offered to pay the cost for the replica of the medals to make this display. And he was genuinely and truly sincere with this offer. However, it was an honor for the Ford family to embrace Commissioner Hale's suggestion. Thank you, Commissioner Hale, for your sincere offer. In my view, there's only a few individuals that are deserving special praise and consideration. Exceptionally, truly individuals such as Captain Charlie James Ford is not readily found. And at times, they fail to receive the acclaim that they justly deserve. And paraphrasing a quote by Susie Kaysen, which says, "Time has always been the greatest ally to truth and discovery, because time will eventually relieve and reveals all." It is my sincere hope that this display in the Suwannee County Museum will suffice as a perpetual reminder how an obscure young man from the backwoods of this county inspired many along his fruitful journey and found his destiny defending this great country in the United States Armed Forces. Captain Ford, Charlie, was my big brother. From one soldier's perspective, I think of him as being a quintessential soldier and exceptional military officer. Charlie was a genuine American patriot who gave his last full measure of devotion to this country. For me, it's hard to believe that Charlie died almost 50 years ago. For me, this is an example of the brevity of our years on this earth. A couple of months ago, one of my standard daily devotionals from the Daily Bread was entitled Leaving a Legacy, from Acts, the 13th chapter in the 36th verse, which states, "The Apostle Paul said of David that he served God's purpose in his own generation, and he rested." The same devotional went on to say, "The very best of us is only remembered for 100 years or so, and the rest of us are soon forgotten." This quote from an unknown author is applicable, which says, "Our memories of the ocean will linger on long after our footprints in the sand is gone." I was 19 years old. I was about to finish up my second deployment to Vietnam when my commanding officer called me in and informed me that he had received verification from the Red Cross that Charlie had died. At that time, my family only academically knew that Charlie had been awarded a Valor Award during this deployment in Vietnam. During this period, the military was overwhelmed with casualties from Vietnam. And as a result, casualty assistant officers did not provide families with the level of assistance that they provide today. During Charlie's funeral, the military never provided the family a copy of his Valor citation, which would have provided some details of the circumstances of his gallantry in combat, or the fact that he had been awarded the second Valor Award. Preceding this, even though I was on active duty at the time, I had a chance to visit with Charlie on 2 occasions after his Vietnam deployment. He never once mentioned his Valor Awards. As you should know, it is not untypical for a hero not to boast about their combat exploits. Let me say this, roughly 2 years ago, I believe it was providential to have some thought-provoking encounters regarding Charlie. The first encounter was when Susan, my wife, and I was picking grapes at a U-Pickett grape field in Brantford, when the vineyard owner came up to us and asked us our name. And when we told him Ford, out of the blue, he said, in 1968, when I was going through the Army basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, my company commander was a Captain Ford, and he was from Suwannee County. Of course, I was beaming with pride. I revealed to him that his company commander was my big brother. And I felt good that Charlie was somehow still remembered in this area. The other encounter was a short time later, when I met this African American gentleman at Certified Plumbing and Electric, as it was called then. After a brief conversation, he asked me, was Charlie Ford my brother? When I said yes, he said he was 9 or 10 years old when he died in that aircraft incident in the late 1960s. He went on to tell me that Charlie was a legend. He said all the kids in the community revered him as a black pilot from Lido. These 2 encounters sparked the interest in my mind that was already burning in my spirit to find out more information about Charlie's military service. It sparked a memory that I had over 40 years ago in 1977, when I was assigned to the 10th Special Forces Group in Fort Devens, Massachusetts. I was a young warrant officer at the time. I met this older sergeant major, and during our conversation, I found out that he had been assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group in Vietnam in 1967, the same time my brother Charlie was there. I abruptly asked him, did he know my brother, Lieutenant Ford? The sergeant major told me that he and Charlie was in the same detachment, Detachment 52, Special Project Delta, but they were on different teams. He went on to tell me that Charlie had a sterling reputation as a young officer. He said the senior commanders would select him over senior officers for key missions. He said that Charlie, Lieutenant Ford, was known for studying every operational intelligence report and read every after-action report he could get his hands on. He said that Charlie was an expert on Viet Cong and North Vietnamese tactics. I revealed to him that Charlie had died in 1969. He kept on saying to me that he could not believe that I was Lieutenant Ford's brother. Reflecting on it now, pre-chance, it may have been precisely the irony that he was meeting Charlie's brother 10 years after serving with him in Vietnam. Or, on the other hand, maybe he couldn't believe that compared to Charlie, that I was kind of rather unremarkable. When I started requests to retrieve Charlie records from the National Archives, it turned out to be a lengthy task. It took several inquiries to get the information that I sought. But in the end, it disclosed some notable information regarding Charlie's acclaimed service. Before I attempt to explain to you what makes Charlie's accomplishments and achievements so ordinary, you need to have some kind of familiarity with the military recognition system. However, this could be a slippery slope. When one attempts to differentiate between military service awards, because all military service is meritorious. However, it is important to understand the distinction between the 2 basic categories of combat recognition. First, all combat veterans who have borne the hardships and the perils of a combat zone are deserving to be honored and esteemed by us individually and collectively as a hometown community and as a nation. Typically, the military recognizes these service members with meritorious type awards. Meritorious meaning deserving of reward or praise. Secondly, people who have served in combat will reserve the term hero for only a select few. It should be reserved for those who have performed amazing acts and facing grave danger, and whom many have sacrificed their lives in doing so. Typically, they are recognized for their acts of bravery with the valor or gallantry type awards. Valor, which means boldness or determination when facing grave danger, especially in combat. Two distinct categories of recognition: meritorious service and valor or gallantry award. Let me say this. In a general sense, it is acceptable to hail all service members as amazing, heroic young men and women, each a volunteer who chooses to serve in the military and potentially put themselves in harm's way. Nevertheless, the term hero or true hero is one who selflessly puts his life on the line to carry out his assigned mission or to defend his fellow service members. These are the individuals who are deserving special praise or recognition and acclaim. And I want to suggest to this board and to the public this evening that Charlie fits squarely in this group. In order to fully appreciate Charlie's recognition and accomplishments, I think it's appropriate to give you a brief synopsis of him. Charlie was the 12th of 15 children born to the late Reverend Sidney and Alice Ford. Yours truly was the baby of the family, 15. I think smart genes had all depleted by the time I came along. I'm the first to say that I do not possess the attributes that Charlie had. But God gave me something equally as good. He gave me Charlie as a role model to inspire me. Charlie was part of the Ford clan. He grew up on a small family farm in Dowling Park. He graduated with honors from Douglas High School in 1962. For those who may not be familiar with Douglas High School, during that era, in the 1960s, it was a small, segregated, all-black school, which is located on the west side of Live Oak. February 1963, Charlie enlisted into the United States Army, following 3 older siblings serving on active duty. Charlie enlisted as a radio teletype operator in the Signal Corps. The skills he would acquire in communication would serve him well a few years later on the battlefields of Vietnam as a combat leader. He progressed through the ranks and was promoted to Sergeant E5 within 2 years, which in itself was a notable achievement. I typically say that Charlie was then nominated for Officer Candidate School, but tonight I want you to consider the vetting process, the uphill ascent for someone of Charlie's background, 20 years old at the time. Consider the review mechanism, all the tests, all the board interviews, all the background checks for this young soldier, essentially straight from Douglas High School in Live Oak, to be nominated to be a commissioned officer, to be on par with colleagues from the United States Military Academy, West Point, Citadel, other universities and military institutions. Again, this was a very notable achievement. If you look on this slide right here, look closely on that placard where Charlie is kneeling and holding with his right hand. There's a sign that says, "Follow me," which is the infantry leadership mantra. As you will see, if you're going to follow him, you must be one tough soldier. In April 1963, at 21 years old, Charlie was commissioned as a lieutenant infantry officer. Charlie, tall, handsome, over 6'3", intelligent. A poignant picture of Charlie should be forming in your mind. I would suggest to you that he was the type of person that would not allow his background to be an obstacle to achieving his goals. Charlie not only completed Officer Candidate School, he graduated at the top of his class. Charlie subsequently completed Airborne and Special Forces Green Beret training. Consider, Special Forces Green Beret back then was the premier Tier 1 warfighting mission, special mission operators. This was before the Delta teams, and the SEAL team operators of today. In the 1960s, there was a popular song called The Ballad of the Green Beret by Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler. In part, the words from this song says, "Fighting soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret, silver wings upon my chest, these are men of America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 will win the Green Beret." Early 1967, Charlie deployed to Vietnam. While in Vietnam, Charlie was assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group, as I alluded to earlier, conducting counterinsurgency operations, search and destroy missions, and an advisor to elite military operation units. Charlie's official military records show during this deployment, on 2 separate and distinct occasions, he was recognized for exceptionally valorous action and awarded the 2 Silver Star medals, the 3rd highest award for valor and gallantry. To put this in perspective, I dare say, of all the service people that you may know, it is probably unlikely that any of them have been awarded the Silver Star medal. In other words, Silver Star recipients are in very select group. Now, to know a person who have been awarded the 2nd Silver Star medal is nearly off the chart of possibility. Charlie was promoted to captain and nominated to be a company commander of an infantry basic training company at Fort Benning, Georgia, upon his Vietnam deployment. It was during this period when that Branford Grapevine grape vineyard owner I spoke to earlier remembers him. He was then nominated to attend the United States Army Rotary Wing Helicopter Pilots Training Program. To be accepted in the flight training program is both tough academically. One must pass the flight aptitude test and then show the physical dexterity coordination for helicopter flight training. Again, Charlie never entertained the fact that his background would be an obstacle for him achieving his goals. He was among the first of Suwannee County natives to become a military pilot. November 1969, as I said earlier, I was still serving in Vietnam. On a Monday, November the 3rd, 1969, while participating in a flight training exercise at Fort Benning, Georgia, the aircraft which Charlie was flying as co-pilot crashed. According to the Associated Press news report, Charlie and the aircraft pilot were both Vietnam veterans. The pilot was Chief Warrant Officer John M. Mercer. He was from Baltimore, Maryland. It were the 2 service people who was killed in this deadly mishap. Captain Charlie James Ford was only 25 years old. He was married less than 2 years. In that ballad of the Green Beret, it went on to express, when that Green Beret was serving in Vietnam, it says, back at home, his young wife waited. The Green Beret had met its fate. He had died for those oppressed. He was one of America's best. With the irony, as in the words of this ballad, for Charlie's wife, Mercer, her Green Beret had moved swiftly and expeditiously and with lethality through and above the jungles of Vietnam. But in a pine forest in Georgia, Mercy, her Green Beret, had met its fate that dreadful Monday afternoon. 6 years after enlisted into the Army, Charlie's body was returned to Lido. He was laid to rest in the Claywood Cemetery, a small, obscure cemetery off of County Road 250 and 161st Street near Caroline Leonard's Park. He was interned next to his dad, the late Reverend Sidney Ford, and 3 older siblings who had died at infants. Outside the standard protocols, there was no acknowledgement of his extraordinary military accomplishments. I will suggest to this board, by any measurable standards, Charlie's exemplary service is unparalleled for 6 years of active service. I will suggest to this board that Charlie is the highest decorated native Suwannee County service member from Suwannee County. This is a list of Charlie's military citations and awards. 2 Silver Star medals, a Bronze Star medal, a Purple Heart medal, 20 0 Army Air Medals, United States Army Commendation Medal, the Presidential Unit Citation, the Vietnam Campaign Medal, the Vietnam Service Medal with 2 service stars, the National Defense Medal, the U.S. Army Good Conduct Medal, an Expert Infantry Badge, the Combat Infantry Badge, United States Army Parachutist Badge, Republic of Vietnam Cross Palm with Unit Citation, the Expert Marksmanship Badge, the Vietnamese Parachutist Badge, United States Army Aviation Badge, Pilot, United States Special Forces. In order to appreciate the accomplishment, you not only need to hear the words on his valor citation, you need to internalize, you need to contextualize, and you need to visualize Charlie's combat exploits. All of you probably have known service people who have served in the combat, but to effectively lead soldiers in combat is on a whole nother level, especially when one is outnumbered by the enemy forces. You would hear a statement of Charlie Valor citation, words like numerically superior enemy force. In other words, Charlie was outnumbered in these engagements. As a very young officer, Charlie was a true combat warrior, 22, 23 years old at the time. He demonstrated remarkable skills. Charlie possessed what I call the 5 C's of combat leader. He was courageous, he was competent, he was charismatic, he was compassionate, and he was confident. There is an old adage, old military truism that says no battle plan survived the first contact with the enemy. As you listen to the citations being read, you will see that Charlie had a unique ability to remain calm. He could maintain a sense of combat awareness. Combat awareness is to know where you are, where your enemies are, and what tactics to deploy in order to defeat your enemy. And he was unflappable under fire. Listen for words in the citation such as gallantry and acts of valor. I want to thank you for your indulgence when I go to the citation. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to present these citations in the mode that the military commander would do. His first Silver Star Medal. United States of America, by the direction of the President under the provision of the Act of Congress approved 9 July 1918. The Silver Star Medal is presented to First Lieutenant Charlie J. Ford, Infantry, Department of Army, Vietnam, Detachment B-52, 5th Special Forces Group Airborne, 1st Special Forces, APO San Francisco, for gallantry in action while engaged in a military operation involving conflict with an armed hostile force in the Republic of Vietnam. First Lieutenant Ford distinguished himself by exceptional valorous action on 15 August 1967 while serving as a senior Special Forces advisor to a Vietnamese company on a search and destroy mission deep in hostile territory. Moving through a jungle on the side of a hill, a friendly patrol made heavy contact with a reinforced Viet Cong North Vietnamese Army company. Despite intense enemy automatic weapon and small arms fire, Lieutenant Ford fearlessly led his men in an aggressive assault on a numerically superior insurgent. He personally eliminated a automatic weapon position while overrunning the hostile force. He then immediately established a defensive perimeter on the top of the hill and calls for airstrikes on the regrouping insurgents. In spite of heavy bombardment, the determined enemy mounted a fierce series of counterattacks. Lieutenant Ford courageously exposed himself to a savage onslaught to check ammunition supplies, to encourage his men and to aid the wounded. He also selected vital, important enemy targets and directed numerous airstrikes on their position, enabling his unit to emerge from a 6-hour battle without a single fatality. His outstanding leadership resulted in an overwhelming victory. First Lieutenant Ford gallantry in action was in keeping with the highest tradition of military service and reflect great credit upon him, his unit, and the United States Army. Special Order Number 6534, dated 20 December 1967, Robert C. Tabor, Brigadier General Chief of Staff, United States Army. Second Silver Star. United States of America, by the direction of the President, approved by Congress on July 9, 1918. The Silver Star Medal presented to First Lieutenant Charlie J. Ford, Infantry, Department of Army, Vietnam, Detachment B-52, 5th Special Forces Group Airborne, 1st Special Forces APO, San Francisco, California. For gallantry in action while engaged in a military operation involving conflict with the armed hostile force in the Republic of Vietnam. First Lieutenant Ford distinguished himself by exceptional valorous action on 13 and 14 December 1967 as a Special Forces advisor to a Vietnamese airborne ranger company on a search and destroy mission in enemy-controlled territory. While moving through a heavily jungle valley, unit made contact with 2 platoons of North Vietnamese soldiers. Lieutenant Ford immediately deployed his troops and led a fierce charge on hostile force. Braving a hail of bullets from automatic weapons and machine guns, he placed deadly fire on the enemy soldiers as he directed the assault. When the North Vietnamese broke contact and fled, Lieutenant Ford quickly established a night defensive position and supervised the helicopter evacuation of the wounded. Anticipating a counterattack at dawn, he arranged for airstrikes and helicopter gunship support. 2 enemy companies unleashed a savage rocket, mortar, automatic weapon attack on his position shortly at daybreak. Completely exposed to a withering fusillade, he directed airstrikes on the advancing ranks of the enemy mortar position. His troops began to run low on ammunition. He called for a resupply helicopter. The ammunition supplies dropped to the ground 25 meters outside the defensive perimeter. With bullets striking all around him, Lieutenant Ford fearlessly ran forward to help recover the vitally needed ammunition for his beleaguered men. He then moved among his troops, treating the casualties and directing more lethal airstrikes on the North Vietnamese positions until friendly reinforcements arrived. His courageous leadership in close combat was an inspiration to the men he led in repelling the determined attacks of a numerically superior enemy force. First Lieutenant Ford gallantry in action is keeping with the highest tradition of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. And I would like to add is a credit to the Suwannee County community. General Order number 1474, 1 April 1960. The City Council has approved a proclamation proclaiming September 19th as Captain Charlie Ford's Day. This promises to be a notable tribute to Charlie, which would have been his 74th birthday. And I invite the community to come out to this occasion, which will be on September the 19th at 6 p.m. at Veterans Memorial Park downtown. And I'd like to end with this quote. This is a timely quote by a notable author, English author, Sir Terry Pritchett, which comes to mind. What he said was this: do you not know that a man is not dead as long as his name is still spoken? I want to thank you for allowing me to take more time than you anticipated, but I would like to share with you the true story of Captain Charlie Ford. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Well, I know me and you, and I'm sure several others have had many discussions about your brother. And he truly was a hero, and glad that he's from Suwannee County. All right. Next up, we have County Attorney item, discuss possible board action agreement between the Development Authority and Board of County Commissioners. Mr. Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of meetings ago, Mr. Mr. Harris and I discussed that the piece of property at the Catalyst site that the county has been interested in for a number of years finally got within our price range. It went from $15,000 down to under $4,000, $3,075 per acre, and being on 63 acres. As we move forward with the process, looking at what our budgetary restrictions were and not knowing exactly where we're going to be with all of the other projects and with the having the projects be in reimbursable funding, we decided to approach the Development Authority to see if they would partner with the county in purchasing the property. Development Authority was very receptive to the idea and unanimously approved it, but they came back and wanted to have particular terms with us that what we said was that they would purchase the property at some time in the future, when we were able to be able to reimburse them. They wanted to have the terms better spelled out than just as sometime in the future and how we would go about doing it. The purchase price of the property was $194,984 for the 63.41 acres. Again, like I said, at $3,075 per acre. Now, what they would like to do is the Development Authority and how to really structure this between two governmental agencies is to do it in the fashion that they're going to go ahead and purchase the property, and they'll be purchasing it within the next 30 days. But we would have an option to purchase the property from them over the next 3-year period of time. And for the option, what we would do is each year we would make a $10,000 payment to the Development Authority. Instead of them charging us interest and going back and forth, we'd make the $10,000 payment in each of the next 3 years, or up until the time that we can exercise the option to purchase. And out of the $10,000 payment that we would make, whenever we exercise the option to purchase, 50% of that would be applied to that purchase price. The Development Authority discussed the time period, what would be reasonable. 3 years is what they came up with. From our standpoint, we'll either by then know we're in or we're out, on the particular project. And if we're not in by the end of the 3-year period of time, the Development Authority would then be free to go ahead and sell it to somebody else, unless we come up with some type of renewal provision at the end of the 3-year period of time. So what I'm proposing is the format that you see before you for the option to purchase, so we can present it to the Development Authority at their next meeting, which is, 2 weeks? About 2 weeks?
Second, third.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for me for that? Any questions regarding the contract or the agreement?
I have a question regarding the land.
Yes, sir.
One concern with a lot of the sinkholes that are out in the Catalyst site as it is that one of the things that we'd be looking at an inspection? When we inspect it to see if there are potentially the same problems, or is this something that we won't know until the land's cleared and the water comes?
Let me tell you something, we are so good at repairing sinkholes that you don't have to worry about a thing. We've become experts at the Catalyst site. Truth is, we can walk the property, but just like on the balance of the property where we have had sinkholes, you're not going to be able to tell anything from the surface unless there is one that is already settled out there. The soils are horrible in that location. We've had to mitigate those problems from the very beginning of the Catalyst site, but Having said that, that site was selected because of the availability of the rail and the rail spur. I would venture that if a company comes along and wants to build on there, they will probably do something similar to what Foster had to do. Once we turned that site over after we had completed what we were going to do in our developers agreement, they utilized ground penetrating radar on a fairly tight grid over the entire site. And they identified some anomalies, and they actually came back to us and wanted us to fix those, and we swiftly told them that we had already turned the property over to them. So they hired some companies to come in there and mitigate those anomalies. They weren't even sinkholes. So that's something that a company can do. I mean, what we're trying to accomplish with this is ensure that there is a large enough parcel on that southwest portion of the catalyst site for a larger company to come in and develop. If we were to get a distribution center or something of that nature, we otherwise have two smaller pieces, one on each side of this new road we're going to be building, and that's just not sufficient for them to build a larger facility and be able to accommodate stormwater retention and things of that nature. So I think this is a very good plan. And I just want to say I'm very grateful that the Development Authority was interested in partnering with the county and working with us on this, because it was a time prior to our budget workshops, we didn't know where we were going to be. But this is something that we can program in over time if the board has an interest. And our hope is now that we can attract some of these companies that have been looking for a larger parcel. When we have entertained some other entities over the last several years, we told them what we had out there was these two narrow pieces of property on each side of the road that we're going to build. We didn't have the rail spur in yet, so it was kind of premature. But more than one of them told us that the properties were just too small. So this is going to be helpful, I think. I'm not concerned with the sinkholes because I don't envision the county, unless I'm wrong, entering into the type of agreement that we did with Foster. We had a lot of responsibility trying to attract that anchor customer. They had a lot of demands. We've got very, very large retention ponds out there, and they did become locations of sinkholes. But I'll just remind you that those massive retention ponds that we have out there were locations where we bought properties and used them for borrow material to put suitable soils on the Faulkner site that we were obligated to do under the contract. And I'm sure it saved us millions of dollars where we otherwise would have had to haul that material in. So we converted those to retention ponds and saved a great deal of money versus trying to put dirt back in them. And they have served us well, despite the fact that we occasionally have to go out and fix sinkholes. We had a lot of them initially. We still have some out there to repair, but they're not interfering with any of the operations. So I don't see it being a big issue for us.
Any other questions?
Attorney,
Yes, sir.
the $10,000, what is this? What is this contract? What is it? Only 50% of it is able to be used towards the purchase price if we elect to purchase the property from them in the next 1 to 3 years. So what else does it do for us other than just hold the property?
Well, that's what an option to purchase does, is hold the property, and you pay for the right for them to hold it. From the Development Authority standpoint, they're paying almost $200,000 on there. If you look at just the interest payment, if we went out and borrowed the money on there, it would be relatively close to the $5,000 that you're talking about in interest that would be paid. That's at 2.5%, for the year. And so what they're really getting is interest on their money that otherwise would be sitting in their account, because we would be able to utilize the other $5,000 for the purchase price.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Andy.
approve it.
I make a motion to approve.
We got a motion to approve by Commissioner Sessions. Second by Commissioner Hill. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, sir. Moving on to Betty Lauder, staff report. I know the microphone's over there, but I'm used to looking this way, so every time I look turn.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, community. I'll just be brief in my report tonight unless you have questions, but you know, one of our major undertakings for the summer is our summer reading program in all of our libraries, and I want to just give you an update in terms of what happened this summer, and it's mainly statistical, and it only relates to Suwannee County. So I'm happy to let you know that this year we had 8,996 citizens participate in our program. 7,305 was the youth and children in terms of the program, and the other 1,691 was adults. So we're sort of regrouping. I've already started our school year programming, and so I want to, as usual, invite everyone to come to the library. You don't come and you know someone, send them over. The best way to experience the library is to visit the library. You can do that either online or on site or both. A lot of people do. This year we tried a new program, or was invited to participate on the Summer Break Spot program. That's the food program for children 18 years and under. And we did that this time. It was only at the Live Oak Library. I'd like to extend that to Branford and Darling Park this year coming up. But this time we fed 1,393 kids, and that's during the month of June and July. So we've been really busy this summer, and we've already geared up for our programs for the fall. We usually have programs on Thursday and Monday night. And I want to encourage all of you to take a look at the resources that we have. I have to remind people of that because we have a lot of online resources and paper resources that some of you probably are not aware of. But just to have the opportunity to let you know that we have a resource there for you. It is not a free resource. It's free for your use, but somebody pays for it, and you'll be surprised at how much you can help you. So, if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to try and answer them, or I'll get an answer for you.
Any questions?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
And it's nothing really to do with this, but you had mentioned or done a presentation, and I wrote it down somewhere, about the Florida Treasure or something. Wasn't that something that you talked about?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
The Florida Treasure, that there's funds out there to be
I
found.
think it's Florida Treasure Hunt.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I've been asked about
Where it's
that.
unclaimed funds, unclaimed treasure.
Yeah.
Same deposit box.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that's still available. I think it was probably about a year and a half or maybe so ago that we had representatives from the state to come down and assist people with trying to find and discover whether they had or their families had unclaimed funds. And a lot of people discovered that they did. Some people said they keep up with their family. Tori said we keep up with our money. But some people, there are funds that previous family members have had that a family would be entitled to. And so if you're interested in that, we can get a website for you, or we can get a contact for you. But a lot of people are beginning to do that now.
You'd be surprised what's on there. I did mom, dad, and all my grandparents passed away, and I did all of them. And my granny had a $1,100 life insurance policy that nobody knew about. That was unclaimed. That was on there. I think my dad had security deposit from an electric company. That was everything back that was on there. So I mean, there's monies that you may not realize that will show up.
Well, please do get that, well, I've been asked about it, and of course, I didn't have the right information.
It's worth taking a look at. I didn't know anything about stocks my dad had, but
Only question I have for you, we did apply for that, library grant for the Brantford Library, didn't we? Or, I know we talked about it.
we need to apply for that this year coming up. The reason is because we did not identify property that it would, you remember we wanted
I
to
know we talked
find.
about potentially buying a piece of property next door
Right,
or going up if we couldn't get property.
right.
Um,
That would be a renovation project, so we would change it over and resubmit.
So
as
we,
a renovation project.
okay, so that we need to do it this year then.
Yeah.
I was thinking we already did it. I was gonna ask if you knew where we were at on the list, but,
We need to submit the application.
oh, if it didn't supply, we ain't on the list. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other? Thank you. All right, moving on to general business, discuss possible board action, escrow for fire station. Randy Harris.
Actually, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, both of these items that I have on here kind of followed our budget workshops the other day. I had a conversation with Commissioner Hale afterward about the fire station we've been talking about, putting them on the, somewhere in the vicinity of I-10 or north, in any event, service north of the city, north of the railroad track, and everything back to the north and west. So since we haven't made it into our budget hearings yet, and we don't have another scheduled workshop, I was going to ask that the board consider going ahead and escrowing some money for that purpose, for that station. We have money in our fire contingency. We could set aside $200,000 and still have adequate contingency there. If the board chooses to do so, we can just start funding that. That's without touching the general revenue. That's just keeping it in the contingency of fire.
So we're not doing anything other than just renaming it then?
Correct. We were just established, we just direct finance to create a line.
Create a line
in the budget and move $200,000 in there to start setting money aside for that station.
Yeah, I don't have a problem setting money aside for it. I think we gotta have a lengthy conversation on how we're gonna fund the new station as far as manning it and equipment, but I don't have a problem planning for that discussion.
Well, my next item was to ask for $500,000 out of general revenue to man it.
Well,
The
you might as well
equipment.
find out.
No, we'll start small. We'll start small. We'll just use the contingency for now and just to create a line and put some money aside. I agree, we'll have to deal with the other later.
I agree there's a need for it, but we're gonna have to have a lot of thought on it. We're having a hard time manning the ones we have. I don't wanna compound the problem until we kinda get one problem straightened out. But I think we got a couple of years of escrow to do anyway, so we got time to work on it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the intention, I mean, let's at least get the ball rolling, not being a 12-hour kind of
You understand? So, y'all okay with it?
thing.
All right, and then, I guess, what was your next one? Or not escrow, setting aside some funds for I-75, 136.
Right, just for utility easements. My hope is that we don't have to pay for any of these easements. I've spoken to Mr. Pravat about it, and to you, Mr. Chairman, I think we can negotiate something with property owners out there to take their septic tanks offline and make the connections. But I think it would be prudent for us to go ahead and set aside about $50,000 in case we need it. Just create a line for that purpose for utility easements at the I-75 interchange if necessary. We can direct finance to create
I'm
that
hopeful
line.
that we won't need it, but we need to have it there in case. Y'all okay with that, or have any questions?
Where would that go into?
Say that.
That'd be a separate,
It'll-
we don't have a public utilities.
Well, we actually, for the first time, we did break out all these utilities in your budget document this year. So I'm trying to set that up with the anticipation of those things coming online. But for now, we could just set it aside in the board budget as set aside $50,000 for utility easements.
It would just.
We just create a line.
Create a line in the board budget. If we wind up not needing it, it's going back into board contingency anyway. So
Right.
I don't have a problem with that.
It'll be, this is just trying to avoid the necessity to go back and amend the budget later.
No, I
once it's
agree,
adopted.
I agree. But, well, need to add one more item to that. At the last board meeting, I told y'all I was gonna bring the stuff for the FHP radars to the budget workshops, and I left it on there. I brought it tonight since we were gonna be discussing the budget. I have it here, I believe it was 15,000. No, you're right, 12,000. It was 15 with the other one that we already purchased. But there was 5 that they needed, they're about $3,000 a piece. We purchased one, they need 4 more. So it's about $12,211, I believe it's off the, I believe he told me it was off the sheriff's contract, but I know at the last board meeting, we discussed go ahead and then putting it in the budget. And I told y'all I wanted to talk about the budget workshops, but if y'all are okay with that, I'll give this to Mr. Harris and we'll go ahead and have him direct finance to make the changes for all 3 items in the budget for.
Okay.
So that took care of both of those items, correct?
Yes.
All right, moving on to item 24, discuss with possible board action any issues associated with the water of the wastewater plant at I-75-136. Do you have anything on that?
I don't have anything else.
All right, you had one additional agenda item. Discuss authorization to place an order for equipment with long lead times that are included in the budget. You're talking about the proposed budget?
Yes, sir. We run into this every year, and we certainly took it on the chin this year with the knuckle boom trucks, but the board by consensus agreed with the ambulance, the tanker. We've got other equipment with road department. We know these things are requiring long lead times. They're in the budget. I'd like to have authorization to go ahead and place these orders on all of this equipment. We'd have to bring the agreements back to the board, but we can get those put together and bring the actual agreements back to the board at the public next meeting or as soon as they're available.
Already budgeted down on this probably.
I don't have a problem with it. We're not making the actual purchase though until we approve the agreements, correct?
We don't make the purchase until they show up.
Well, I know that,
But we need, we just need to process the paperwork to get them ordered. And that, we learned this last year, that just means we're on a list with lots of others until they actually procure the chassis and start building those things, and it takes 6 or 8 months or a year.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. You need that in the motion?
Yes, please.
Motion approved.
Got a motion to approve by Commissioner Fleming. Got a second by Commissioner Sessions. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. I didn't see any other additional agenda items, or wasn't any, correct?
No, sir.
All right, this time we'll open the floor to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, they'll make their way to the podium. Name, address for the record.
For the record, Eric Musgrove, 11501 County Road 132. As chairman of the Suwannee County Historical Commission, I wanted to formally thank Mr. Ford and his family for the donation of Charlie Ford's award from that exhibit for the museum. I just wanted to formally thank everyone in the public meeting. We appreciate that addition to the museum's exhibit. So thank you, Mr. Ford, and the rest of the Ford family.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Eddie Lawrence, 9907 132nd Street. I just want to thank the Suwannee Park and Recreation Department. My granddaughter attended the summer camp for the second year this year, and I was really pleased with the way that they treated the kids, the way that they teach the kids, the fun that they had, and I just really feel blessed to be able to have had that experience. So thank you, Greg.
Pay you now, or?
I'll pass on to the staff to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, I do, I'm sorry. Just briefly, I attended a lunch today with the chamber, with planning. That we mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I think you maybe
I didn't get the invite.
Um,
I'll tell you, I was tied up, I couldn't.
Yeah, regarding the Christmas on the Square, and, you know, they had huge turnout last year. They're anticipating a larger turnout, trying to spread the thing out, doing a lot more planning. What's really important is trying to recruit volunteers that will agree to work with them on this larger event this year. So I just wanted to announce that. I went ahead and I volunteered Bo Hancock and a few others that are in attendance here. But they announced that they needed 100 volunteers. So they really, anyone's got an interest, let me know, let Jimmy Norris know, let someone know that you're interested if you are, because they're really anticipating a big turnout. They had their hands full last year. They said it, I mean, they just need help herding people. It's gonna be a big event. Should be nice. Anyway, I just want to announce that early because it's gonna take a while to recruit all those people. That's all.
Yeah, I've always been told trust but verify. 100, is that what y'all really said you needed?
Yeah, we could use 200, but, you know.
All right, sir. All right. Board members' questions, comments, start with Ms. Richardson.
Just one announcement, that is on August the 30th, Thursday at 6 p.m. We're having a Branford Town Hall meeting down in Branford Hatch Park Community Center. I look forward to seeing as many staff as we can get there. Not singling anybody out. Greg, how you doing? He was at the last one, and man, it was just it was so good for him. So for the town of Branford, so that'll be at 6 p.m. That's it.
I don't have anything.
Yeah.
I don't have, I will mention, again, just appreciate our employees and the hard work they do. I've had a lot of people complain the way they have been and some other issues. Our guys always step up, they do, I always want to say thank you for that. And again, I'll mention also, we had the Live Oak Charity Ball Saturday night. That was a great event as well, great turnout.
I want to say thanks to the fire services for providing all the support for the Oxnard funeral. It was a very nice ceremony, and I'm sure it was a big benefit to their family.
Always leave you out, Mr. Pratt. You got anything?
No, sir. Y'all don't generally want to hear from me.
I don't have anything. I did get I got hit up a couple weeks ago, and I got called and reminded about it today. I guess, I don't know if it's the Branford Booster Club for the football. We wanted to know if the board wanted to purchase a banner. It was $250. Told them I'd run it by y'all. I told them I wasn't expecting to check by myself for $250, so.
Oh,
They'll pay you back.
Y'all.
I'm sure Robert's going to.
I'm sure they will. I told them I'd relay the message.
I'll kick in 50. Split it up 5 ways, it's 250, right?
That'd work. Everybody all right with that? If Clyde'll do it. Otherwise, I put him on the spot. Goes up.
We do quarterback club, and we don't actually have a banner or anything, but we just sponsor an ad in there.
And they're,
But I have a problem.
yeah, I think Brent may have seen our ad. That's why they called us. I don't know.
It's $250.
Yeah. Well, they got another one for $500, but I wasn't gonna put you on the spot. Do you want the big one or the small one? Small. Other than that, I don't have anything. See you much to adjourn. Thank you all for coming out.